Hello and welcome to another episode of The InEVitable. This is MotorTrend's podcast about the future of the car. Where are we going? How are we going to get there? Perhaps might it be in cars without steering wheels, electric cars, hybrid cars, hydrogen fuel cars?
Ooh.
Who knows? Let's find out today. As always, I'm joined with my wonderful host, Johnny Lieberman.
Yes. Sometimes he makes me feel like a guest.
Influencer,
Never.
Extraordinaire,
Yeah.
Automotive car guy. You know him, you love him on all forms of media. I'm, as always, Ed Lowe, head of editorial for MotorTrend. And today's guest is awesome. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yeah, because she's going to be building the cars or has built the cars that we're all going to be driving soon.
Yes, we have. I call this the Engineer Extraordinaire episode. We have Merritt Morris on. She is
not a household name.
Not a household name, but maybe could be.
No.
She is currently working at this cool little robotic startup in
we have to quiz her about.
Yes.
I'm like, what?
What is this? In Santa Monica, California.
Yeah.
But despite how young she looks, she's like almost a 20-year veteran of the automotive industry and has worked like all over the place.
Including with me. We were colleagues for like a brief period of time back at my Autoblog days.
What's that? What's an Autoblog?
I forget. Yeah.
So yeah, she's done media. She's done automotive media. She has she's worked in the tuner industry, intakes, turbochargers,
General Motors to Faraday Future. I mean, that's an insane
to canoe
career.
From legacy, from again aftermarket to big car companies, legacy, the biggest ones, to EV startups. She's kind of done it all.
Yeah.
It should be. I'm looking forward to this. This is going to be hilarious.
I was looking at like what we have coming up, and this is, she really fascinates me more than a lot of other people, just because like I love the development process that goes into making a car. Like, look, if you don't know this industry, you just think you show up at a dealer and there's a car. You have no idea that like there was a large group of people that for 4 years, that's all they did was this thing, and they drove it 1 million miles. And they broke it 1,000 times, and there was fights, and you know what I mean? It's insane. So that's what she does for a living. It's so cool.
And on the notes I have on her, I said this will be part 1 of like 20 conversations we have because we can go super deep. I suspect we'll go really long. So we should.
Yeah, let's get her in here.
We should get her in. Merritt Morris. Well, this is going to be a treat. We have
my former coworker,
engineer extraordinaire Merritt Morris here. We're going to talk about all things actually future of cars for once, because we have somebody here who's an expert on it.
But also like, we talked about when we had the design kids in here about like if I could come back in the next life, maybe I'd be a car designer. But also people that like break cars for a living, like really. I did a thing once with Land Rover with a guy who like helped develop the Defender and really like his job was to destroy it. And I thought we were doing some pretty hardcore stuff. And I go, scale of 1 to 10 on what you do. What are we doing? He goes, oh, this is a 6. He goes, things start breaking at 8.
Okay.
So,
but maybe that's exactly what she does, or maybe it isn't. But let's dive in. Currently, you're not in the automotive space. You're at a new job. And we're going to give a shout out to these folks because you've managed to work your schedule where you can come in and do this on a weekday. So we appreciate you, Merritt, fleet quality engineer at Coco, which is a startup based in Santa Monica doing really cute box-shaped robots that are remotely piloted robot delivery service.
Yes.
Okay.
What do they deliver?
I call it automotive adjacent.
Okay. Literally little boxes about the size of a doghouse on wheels, right? And mostly transporting food?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I've seen these in hotels, like room service. They have like
more on the street, right?
Yeah, this would be in sidewalks, bike lane use. I've seen in some restaurants even like carts for table service that will maybe bring you a water pitcher, things like that.
I saw that at California Pizza Kitchen. Is that Coco or no? It's like a clear. It's kind of got like it's like a moving tray, and it's got.
No, that's different. We're like road based.
Okay, got it.
Oh, okay.
In terms of a bike lane, or
it was really. I can't remember where it was. Some hotel, and like I ordered room service, and like a robot showed up. I was
the future.
What is that?
How fast do these Coco bots go? Coco bots.
Well, currently our average is 3 miles an hour. So in many municipalities, the regulations are up to like 15 miles an hour for
so they can scoot
that kind of use. Yeah, it's in remote piloted comfort. It's about the level of where someone feels comfortable operating it and avoiding obstacles.
And is the idea that eventually this goes fully autonomous, or?
Yes.
Okay. Right. So now you have a drone pilot, but eventually it'll drive itself to bring you lunch.
Yeah. And then with the remote pilot operations, it helps to develop the train the AI. Yeah, train the AI. And
Sure.
So is that how
develop
it works?
the mapping of.
Is somebody actually doing this, or you kind of program the destination and they're watching it and course correcting? Is it like ADAS where you kind of set it and then you're just like, I'm just gonna hang out here?
Still to get to that level, but yeah, it's playing video games right now. That's like what is desirable to look for the pilots.
But that's what Tesla was doing that back in the day, supposedly with their primitive ADAS back 8 years ago. Was that they were watching what drivers were doing and collecting that data and building a database.
Okay, so
I think.
So what do you?
It's a bit different for mapping a drivable space when you're looking at sidewalks and bike lanes is a bit different than mapping your road drivable space.
Right. It's probably not as much out there in terms of, all the car companies are doing the other thing. Like you guys, I know there's others in this space, but everybody's approach is probably a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Okay. So what are you doing for them?
So fleet quality is entailing, improving the reliability on the existing bot design and package, which is more off the shelf kind of assembled parts, and then moving to help define a next generation design that is targeted towards, the data that's been collected in existing operations for the use cases.
So more
in that
hardware
area.
Stuff is what you're working on?
Yeah.
Okay. And then what are the chief, because they're cute, right? They're supposed to be cute. They're supposed to be like non-threatening, right?
Mm-hmm.
These things like it's sort of driving itself in your bike lane or potentially on the sidewalk. Like, what do you think about? Like when you go, I got to design a cute little robot. Like, what are some things that we wouldn't are not obvious? Like, oh God, I didn't think about that.
It's definitely a lot of form follows function. And so it's thinking about how someone has to interact with it, and a lot about the factors around the space it needs to fit in.
But does it have? Do you need to have a
visibility
face?
concerns?
Disability?
Those are some of the questions I asked. And the first thing about is, you're used to Automotive where there's your brand design, right? There's
design language, there's a face,
yes,
eyes,
the grill is very important,
Yeah.
and all of that. So, that's starting to evolve, and it's definitely becomes a bit anthropomorphic, right?
Yeah,
that
good
people,
word. One of my favorite words.
people, see a face and it's still got headlights and reflectors and some of those elements that give it character. So it's following the form's following the function.
Okay.
A bit.
Right.
So let's just get this straight.
What's the military version look
Right.
like?
Hey, so you order from a food delivery service.
Eye patch.
Right. It's somebody. It pulls up someplace and then a human interacts with it. Right. Is there like a key code or a button or something like? And then because what I want to get to is
Phone.
Are you? Do you have like a threat assessment department? Are you like people are bot jacking? Like, do you have to worry about like people are kicking these things over and stealing the food inside? Like,
I mean, it's all monitored in operations. So yeah, it's immediately identified if there's someone.
I mean, I will tell you,
trying to mess with them.
If I was between the ages of 11 and 17, I would kill all these things. I would they would all be destroyed. Like
Why?
spray paint. I was a horrible child. I was awful. Yeah.
Okay.
No. Yeah. You know, I was really.
So
bad.
just for fun, not to take the food inside. I'd be taking the food inside.
We used to ride. No. We used to ride around on bikes with. We would steal pool cues from this place we knew to steal pool from a bar, and we would ride like jousting, and we would destroy like vote for Schmucko signs. We would and get chased around. We were awful.
It's not.
So yeah, do you do engineer around this guy?
It's not too bad, but exactly right. And doing test and reliability and that stuff, I have to come up with the Johnny Lieberman protection test plan.
Yeah,
right?
well, I mean, also kids today, they're just like looking at their phones anyway, so they don't even notice the things.
Right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
I would have destroyed. Like it would have been nothing would have been better.
So how you got to Coco though is because, which is wild, which is awesome, which is also part of the inevitable future, right? Robots are in our future. Automated delivery, driverless, pilotless robots giving us stuff. Look forward to that, folks. But how you got there is via like literally a whole bunch of really interesting positions in automotive. So I kind of want to go through some of that and talk about it, and then really ultimately figure out where are we going with cars and stuff from where you sit as our engineer extraordinaire. But first, we should talk about the silly shirt that I'm wearing because
it's not. I don't think it's.
I wasn't going to say anything.
No, because it is. For those listening at home, I'm wearing one of my most treasured. It's one of my oldest Hawaiian shirts. It's a USC. Colored cardinal and gold Hawaiian shirt. Well, hang on, because Merritt and I are both proud graduates of the best university on the planet, University of Southern California. Fight on. I was disappointed to see that she is wearing like basically a powder blue Bruins shirt, but it does.
And with her hair, it's gold.
But she said it matches her eyes, which is true. So fair enough. But I took a little liberty there. Proud graduate, I think, of USC, right?
Yes.
Okay, very proud, and also an athlete there.
Yes.
You were a swimmer?
Yes, I was a swimmer at USC.
I didn't know that.
What was your stroke?
Sprint freestyle and breaststroke.
Wow, so like the 50 meter?
50, 100.
So you're fast. It's okay.
She's slow. She's very slow.
I don't feel that way anymore in the pool. But
age is a cruel master.
Well, but you were in like Hawaii 2 days ago or something. You did some crazy rough water swim or something. Like,
I was in Hawaii for the Waikiki rough water swim. 52 years that the race has been going on, and typically Labor Day in Hawaii. Sometimes it has to get moved because there's a jellyfish window with moon phases, and so gets shifted at times to avoid that. But yeah, actually, and that's a USC connection too, because a friend of mine, Kaya Headland, had been the race director for many years of that race. She was also a USC graduate and swimmer in early days of
So what's a rough water race
swimming entail? So it's about 2.5 miles. Oof. And so it involves you do beach start and you swim out past the surf and the reefs and head to a big orange buoy that you make a right turn around and then
come back.
Yeah, we'll go straight down along the shore and to get to the next orange buoy and then turn in and go in back to the beach and run up through the chute.
You mean you stand up and start running?
Yeah.
But the swim is the race.
This is
swim,
vacation.
Right?
I go to Hawaii. I just start the beach.
Right. This is what I do on vacation.
Wow, that's really.
But
weird.
I think, and I don't know if I saw your Instagram post on it. You've podiumed or maybe won this occasionally.
Yeah, I podiumed in age group. I was looking at it this morning. 4 times.
Wow.
5 times. I think it was 5.
Okay.
That's pretty good.
I've been 6 times. I swam 5 times because one time I was pregnant with my daughter. I didn't swim the race, but I've run the website for the event for about 10 years now.
Wow.
And so I try and get there as much as I can.
Yikes.
That's cool.
What stroke do you do for a distance swim like this?
Just freestyle.
Really?
Oh yeah.
I like the I'm not a swimmer, but I learned like the life-saving swim, which is the side stroke, which is the one that like conserves the most energy. Like,
but it's a race. You're trying to expend the
not for me.
energy.
It would be survival for me. I'd be like,
2.5 miles
Yes,
swimming. I'd
yes.
just be dead. Yeah,
Right.
I'd be the buffet
How do-
at the end.
how do I stay alive?
Yeah, I'd be shark food.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Awesome.
pretty good.
I wanted
Yeah.
to get that out of the way, so I'm
That's
wearing
very cool.
fight on. I'm wearing my shirt. You were an engineer at USC, mechanical,
Yes.
right? Okay, so we got so much to talk about. I just want to skip through a little bit of like, where did the love of cars come from? So is it pre college after college? Like
Yeah,
during, like,
I blame my brother.
Okay, what's his name? Call him out.
Older, younger.
My older brother, 3 years older, Marshall Johnson. So when I didn't have much interest in cars until I was about 15, but I was definitely interested in science. I went to space camp 5 times,
Okay.
and
In Alabama.
Alabama and Florida.
Oh wow.
Florida
That
once.
was my whole life. I wanted to go to space camp. I never.
Do you
got to
recommend it for your kids?
I do. I got to see a space shuttle launch when I went to space camp in Florida. I saw the space shuttle Atlantis
Okay.
launch. Definitely cool. I ended up
That's so
you can
cool.
See, later I interned at NASA.
Yes.
So,
It's like
You did?
So,
yes,
yeah.
dude. You don't read it? Like yes. this
I
is
didn't.
it.
I've been running around in booster
Okay,
shots
all
all
right,
morning.
all right.
I don't
Speaking
know
of
anything.
rockets,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so
Whoa! What you doing? That don't skip over interning in
we're
NASA.
not. We'll get there. But
Okay.
so we're talking about cars.
I'd always
Forget cars. Cars are boring. Rockets are way cooler.
I always had a a love and interest in science, and so it was when I was starting to get towards driving age. My brother was into cars. He had a Mazda RX-7, a third gen Mazda
Nice.
RX-7, which was from Peter Farrell Supercars. So
FC.
Peter Farrell tuned
Oh wow! Yeah.
Mazda RX-7. And so he would give me suggestions and be like, a Honda Civic would be good for you. And then it was at the time or Acura Integra, and then
I like how your voice goes higher for your older brother.
Oh.
That's awesome. Let's roast him. That's okay. I don't know your relationship. with him.
Me imitating him. That's not really me imitating him.
Okay.
Yeah.
But he suggested, oh, look at this. They're gonna bring the Acura Integra Type R to the U.S. and he would leave Super Street Magazine.
Nice.
Nice shout out. Around, and I would just start looking at it and be like, what? Okay, what
Who
is this?
says Dave Coleman idiot? No.
Right. Exactly. Well, he wasn't in Super Street.
I know.
Sport compact car
Sorry, yes.
as well.
Woo.
We
Amazing.
should
That's
also
what I
get
meant.
there.
Yes.
Dave lives in Long Beach as well.
Right.
Yes.
So the interest came from your brother. What car did you eventually get when you were of driving age?
So we had a 1995 Toyota Land Cruiser, which was the
Whoa,
first car
seriously?
that, yes,
Hell
that's
yeah.
what I drove.
Oh, that's
13 miles per gallon.
and the beginning.
if that 95. Yeah. 11.
And then I got a
13 gallon gas tank.
Yeah.
Sorry.
And then I got a 1998 Acura Integra Type R.
Holy
nice,
moly.
nice. Those are great. Yeah.
It was I would take one again
Yeah,
in a
right.
heartbeat.
What color?
Green.
Championship white. Yeah,
Oh
that
my
was
God.
before
The best color.
So 90s. I can go into all the geeky stats about the little differences between each one in the years, but it was a 2000 when they brought it back because it was 97, and then 98 and it was only championship white, and then in 2000 they did
that was
yellow
that
and
was
black.
that was her very politely going, duh, Ed. It was the only color back then. Was
Yeah.
championship
Right.
white.
Good,
You could have
good,
any
nice.
color.
Duh.
as long as it was championship white.
Because I took my driver's test in my mom's Integra. So
But it was not a
80,
Type
86.
R.
No, it was an
Excuse
86
me.
Integra.
See, we're talking
First year-
Type R. Okay?
First year pop-up headlights. It was champagne colored. It was very cool.
Where is that car? Can you sell it to me?
I wrecked it into a tree.
Oh, no.
So
Nice.
So no,
Yeah.
Okay.
unfortunately.
You took the
Wow.
shift knob or something, right?
And the engine and the seats and the
Really?
head unit and
Do you still have all that?
the wheel hubs, and I put it into a Honda Civic hatchback.
Oh, cool.
This
Very
story
cool.
just keeps getting better.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were that girl. And this was at USC? You were driving this Civic around with the Type R motor?
Yes.
You were literally Fast and the Furious. I mean, you were
Yes.
your spoon motor. Like, this is, I mean, no, because you were into college right around the time that movie. Like,
And my brother had an RX-7.
not right, exactly.
Wow.
Wow.
Family.
It's
All
amazing.
about family.
And you did so you were a fan and doing the work yourself, like hands getting dirty, that kind of stuff? Or
Yeah, I did. There was a shop in Virginia where I'm from called CD Motorsports, and so I had the shell parts from my wrecked Type R there, and then the Honda Civic, and they helped a lot in a lot of things, and like fabricating exhaust and things like that.
where is this?
Would go every day in the summer to. I sold that one when I finished school.
Okay, made money.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, not then. No.
Be worth a fortune now.
My really fast. I don't know. Yeah, Frankenstein Civic?
Type R motor? OG Type R motor?
Maybe.
I think so. Maybe. I don't know.
So wait, NASA. Who cares about Honda Civic? NASA. What? Tell me about this.
So there's a NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, which I believe is their largest facility in Greenbelt, Maryland. So I'm from the Washington D.C. area, Northern Virginia, and so as part of the high school I went to an all-girls school, but we had different programs in different years where you didn't have class on Wednesdays. It was called co-curriculum. And so your senior year, you were able to do kind of an internship of your choosing, or or a position that was hopefully related to something you were interested in. And so then I interned at the Goddard Space Flight Center in the astrophysics department. Wow. So I worked with a mission called the NEAR mission, stood for Near Earth Asteroid Rendezvous. And there was, with those things, right, lots of times from the launch of the satellite till when it achieves
could be a long
its location, could be many years.
Yeah.
And so it was during the time when the satellite had been launched and it was on its path to this asteroid Eros to do measurements on the material makeup of the asteroid to try and learn what.
You're basically describing the movie with what's his name, where they try to save planet Earth with Ben Affleck. Right.
Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis.
Yeah.
Like, what's
that movie? It's like kind of a great movie that has this 15-minute
Tyler
scene.
in it. Yeah.
So
with the dinosaurs,
the gummy bears,
like
exactly animal crackers.
Yes.
What's that called?
Near.
I've seen it 7,000
I know.
Anyways,
it's gonna come to us. Near Earth. Asteroid
Rendezvous.
Rendezvous. That's, you're literally trying to get as close to an asteroid and take measurements as possible, right?
Yeah.
And what were you doing?
Wait, real quick, was that the one that actually landed on the asteroid?
No,
or is this one that followed behind it?
It just followed behind. So, one of the big hardware pieces of it, I guess, was the gamma ray spectrometer. It was designed and made by engineers at NASA at the Goddard Space Flight Center. And so while the asteroid was traveling, that spectrometer was used in measuring solar flares from the sun. And so I had to look up in logs and look at dates and note anytime there was a solar flare, like X class or above, significant event.
What's X class mean? Okay, that's a significant event. So.
Yeah, of the magnitude of the solar flare event, the measurement of it, and kind of note the dates of when they
determine
occurred.
that by like the distance it comes off the sun?
Yeah. So the gamma ray spectrometer is looking for the radiation emissions that occur.
I'm sure when you showed up today, you're like, they're not going to ask me about this. So
I have a whole book on it. Haven't looked at it a bit.
I got you. High school.
You were good at math in high school. Let's be clear. Math and physics, like favorite topics.
Yes.
Okay. And was this a cherished internship memory? You're like, man, this is awesome. Like, or is it like, because it looks great on your resume, but it's also like, or was it mostly getting coffee and then looking things up on a really dry
logging
tables?
data sounds like not that fun.
No, I liked it. It was definitely educational, and I realized I was like, I don't think I want to work for a government agency. But as well, in working in the physics area, I'd look at stuff like when I got to see and like meet some of the people who had worked on this gamma ray spectrometer, And then there was also like satellite build room in that area, and got a tour of that a bit. And I was like, that's what I want to do.
Right.
You know, I was like, I
hardware.
want to play with this stuff, you know. There was, I remember when I got a tour in the, you know, assembly and build areas, there was a piece they were working on that was going to go up to as part of a Hubble telescope repair.
Oh, so
and
cool.
I was like,
yeah, nice, good. Probably can't do that, but good.
yeah,
probably clean
So
room.
But this was senior year in high school.
yes.
Oh wow,
That's
that's
pretty
before you
amazing.
went to. This is before you
Wow.
even had you had any engineering, like
Yeah.
the actual formal education.
I was trying to figure out how to get my friend's older brother to buy me like Jim Beam. That was my
Right.
big.
Good.
That was my Wednesday.
Johnny's now trying to figure out whether NASA will accept him as an intern at the ripe old age of
I know I'm
46.
useless. No, I know I'm 47. I know I'm useless. I I like all that stuff.
Okay.
All right. So let's cars.
Okay, enough on NASA. Are you good? Are we good?
Well, it sounded like Merritt sounded bored telling us about
Not bored. She was like,
X
we're
event.
going back to like when I was like 17.
Yeah.
I was like, what are we
All right,
talking about?
cars.
So yeah, so USC engineering, we know what that's like. Awesome school, great football team. Yeah, you were actually there during the.
I was.
She was there during like the heyday.
I was there.
of
Before
of
everybody
Leinart.
got- before
You had
everybody-
Reggie
Yes.
Bush and
Yes.
Leinart. Like I went through 8 years. Well, I was there for 4 years, but I was at the back half of an 8-year run where
No one
SC
cares.
never
No
beat
one
UCLA.
Yeah.
She
That's right.
you were there for the mighty rise, like literally the best time.
And a student athlete at that time.
Oh
it
my
was
god.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Johnny can't. Doesn't care. The football player Johnny doesn't care about the greatest football team in college sports.
That was like so corrupt and cheaty that they
Please.
dismantled the program.
Oh please.
And the pool is right next to the practice field.
Right.
So like they'd practice with crowd noise
right.
on and stuff. And so you're swimming and practice and you're like, yeah.
Just jacked up. USC also
We're cheering for me.
like that's an Olympic. That was an Olympic swim stadium.
Yes, 1984.
Because USC is a
Olympic
big
Bowl.
deal. Johnny. There you go.
You're just located well.
Yes,
There's
exactly.
much better school.
Best
All right.
school in Los
Yeah,
Angeles. Thank you.
I mean,
Okay. So after college, your first job, let me get this right, in automotive. Like you had so many awesome
well, hang on.
pursuits.
When did we work together? What point of your career
Well,
was that? So this was like
This was a long time after. She had like a couple other jobs. AEM was AEM your first gig after school?
Yeah, but then that too would be when I crossed paths with Johnny there at Autoblog.
Autoblog. I
'cause
think I started in
I
like
was-
2008, maybe 2009.
But let's just pause for a second and reflect on how legit, again, engineer extraordinaire Merritt is. She was into Acura, Integra, Type R's, and Civic builds pre-college, took one to school, and then puts her money where her mouth is and works at both AEM and Turbonetics. These are two really big names in the aftermarket. AEM is really known for a lot of stuff around automotive electronics. That's actually their name. And then Turbonetics, any guesses what they do, right? They do like giant honking turbos. But while at AEM, you also, you did intake development. You did, you helped them race a Skyline GTR.
Well, so yeah, that was on the side with Automotive forums at the time.
Okay.
And we used some stuff with AEM, and that it was supportive in me going to
Oh, right.
races on the weekends.
Okay. All right. So not
doing that.
not completely related, but
Yeah.
How did you go from proud USC graduate to the tuner world?
Well, I'd been involved right since I started driving. That's when I started going to drag race events at the rise of import drag
Okay.
racing, right to many Battle of the Imports and
Okay.
Naira
IDRC.
races. Yep,
like,
and
ooh,
IDRC.
that's like-
Yeah, so
That's my world back then. Holy moly.
I had my cars in Super Street many times and all of those magazines and
So you were
So
you were racing.
yeah, I raced my street cars, in the all motor class.
Fastest you ever
Wasn't
went?
into turbochargers yet.
Were you 12 second all motor? Were you-
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Which is fast for an all motor 4-cylinder car. So
Well, you got in the 12s with no turbos. That's pretty good.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah. Oh,
I think-
that's impressive.
12 was mostly what was more consistent. In
Yeah,
that
because I
area.
remember like a WRX could do like 13.7
Right.
or something.
Right.
It was like very quick.
Right.
Yeah.
Big
That's
old,
awesome.
big old Hoosier slicks in the front, or no? We used all motor street classes still kind of
yeah, still street
streetable.
tires,
Okay,
yeah.
street tire, right? Not an R comp or something.
'Cause
Cheaty street
I
tire?
would drive there and show up and
But like a cheaty street tire, like 20 tread wear.
well, there wasn't as much available in those times, right? As like now you can get the
Super sticky.
yeah, you get the R compound Yokohama, and
Yeah, Advance.
yeah,
Yeah.
and you sit there with incredible tire noise droning in your ear when you're cruising
because
on
you're
the
driving
highway.
up on it, right? That's hilarious. Okay.
But GM.
So you were already doing this, and that was an easy. People knew you. Yes. These guys were out there. All of these brands at these events would have little tents, and that's what's great about the tuner industry, right? It's such a small industry that the guy literally who has to staff the booth, the tent on the weekend at a local Battle of the Imports, shout out to Michael Choi, and or a Naira event or something, is the same guy who's picking up the phone on Monday and working with the engineers out in Torrance or Gardena or wherever they were at, right?
Yeah.
So if you were applying for a job, they're like, oh yeah, we see here
All
on
right, but how do you get to GM?
So
Well, we gotta talk about Terminetics.
We have to talk about Terminetics?
Yes,
Why?
because we talked earlier, and she told me this hilarious story. So you did AEM,
yes.
and then you worked for Turbonetics, which I knew as, again, one of the turbo suppliers for all these cool street cars and racing and stuff. But that's not what you did at Turbonetics. What were you supporting at Turbonetics?
Well, so yeah, I worked on a lot of turbo upgrades. So doing drop-in replacements for a lot of diesel trucks and Duramaxes and Power Strokes, and also doing some turbo matching to racers. I liked working with rally drivers. That was interested in that, but then also big diesel tractor pullers, right? And so with both of those, exactly, where you see the videos.
They make a lot of horsepower.
Of events on stuff, and it's just a stack of soot spewing out.
Yeah.
And at the time, to me, I was like, this isn't really what I want to encourage.
So to do penance, you went into EVs.
Yeah, I love in racing I started in drag racing, but I love endurance racing and road racing, and so yeah, and whenever SAE Engineering magazine is coming and it's talking every time about electrification, I was like, I feel like I want to learn about that, and I didn't know how else to learn about it than to go and do it.
Right. But you'd already had this because you mentioned working on Duramax and Power Strokes. You'd already been as this is what you do in the aftermarket the aftermarket is after the car comes out. This is the market for it. These companies are trying to how do we make this thing better? We get a car and let's do a measuring session. We got to figure out where the air intake fits on or how to do a better turbo, right? So you're already interfacing, working with Ford and GM product and everybody else, right? So then you go to GM and it's like, hey, I've been working on your stuff already.
Yeah, how'd you get to GM?
So yeah, I had no idea that there was an engineering center in Southern California, in Torrance, California, with GM that had been there for many years, and they did a hiring event looking to expand and grow as things were going into the start of the first electrified vehicles into production. Areas that had been R&D centers were now moving into the production area. And so
and what year is this about?
This was 2008.
Okay, so this is like Chevy Volt era.
Yes, in the development. And it was so that was the launch of the two-mode hybrid, the real-world drive two-mode hybrid, the Tahoe, Yukon.
Oh, right.
A few Silverado and
little
Sierra trucks.
Mild hybrid EVs.
Yeah.
Mild hybrid EV, yeah.
And
that was an in-transmission hybrid, right? It was like just a little help spin the transmission.
Well, so it's where you can get the different variances. Many folks had just kind of like a flywheel replacement type
right.
hybrid.
I just remember with the GM.
But so GM was a full why it was called the 2-mode, right? Of essentially the same kind of structure and basis of like what the Volt transmission was, right? So it evolved from Allison bus transmission that was that structure that was done.
But it was like there was a motor was in the transmission, not like between the engine and the transmission, right? It was like when you bolt in the transmission, the electric motor was in the case.
Two, right? There's 2 motors in it. The main motoring motor, and then the generator motor, which then could clutch in, as well, and add to, full power band for high acceleration that you could use both the generator and the motor to.
And that's what you were working on the truck?
Yeah, so I did some with model year update after that, but that had was the first production release in electrification. So like the engineering center in Torrance did the motor controls development.
Because I always thought it seemed like GM was so ahead of the game at that point. Like if they would, I know bankruptcy's fucked everything up, but like if they would have put a Volt or 2 or 3 Volt batteries into a Suburban, because you could have fit them somehow. There was room, and really done like a plug-in giant SUV 12 years ago. Like, man, they would have had something.
Nobody would have bought it.
I don't know.
Nobody would have bought it. That's like this. That's revelation I just had in this last summer when the gas prices shot up. Like,
no, because gas prices shot up. Remember?
But there wasn't any infrastructure to charge any of that.
But you charge it at your house.
But nobody was doing that either.
No. But like people that had Volts charge at their house. Everyone that had a Volt loved it.
Now a lot of, and this is, I will give.
Let Merritt answer. Well, I don't want to hear your answer.
Can I say that? Okay.
No.
There were definitely different business directions.
Was that a possible direction?
Of
like throwing Volt batteries into ancient history 15 years ago? Like, was that?
So I worked on the 2nd generation rear-wheel drive hybrid system, which eventually made it out as the CT6 PHEV, right? So that was originally to be the next generation of that, the Tahoe Yukon system. So it's that timing, right? It lined up with bankruptcy timing and that stuff. So there were a lot of.
But were they talking about like, let's take the Voltic powertrain and like we can put this in big vehicles. We don't have to compromise, take out the middle seat in the back. We can hide batteries in a giant truck like this.
Well, so right, that's essentially what that was. It was the same, like I said, the structure of the transmission, they're just packaged differently, right? Because you have your transmission tunnel, rear-wheel drive transmission versus the front-wheel drive transmission. And so
we're probably asking Merritt a question that way. I mean, this is but we should be asking Al this because
Al was doing Camaro.
I know, but she was also this was the first job this is your entry-level position. As a.
So technically, the Escalade was supposed to be a hybrid only.
Okay, so
I think I heard that.
Well,
and I know bankruptcy.
That all got canceled.
Yeah, because a lot of stuff. Mid-engine Corvette got canceled.
So
bankruptcy was tough.
So it was hard. I went to the Arlington plant we got as far as going there to talk with them. And so you have to go on a Saturday too, right? Like the rare occurrence of a time when like the line is down and not moving to be able to go in there and do an assessment on the transmission mate process, right? And then the steps to do that assembly. And it's when you have that type of product and it has to have that run rate, anything that could hiccup that is
bad.
Yes.
That's
and so then you're trying to work it's still the take rate expected on the hybrid model would be much lower. So it's like every, small handful, we have to insert this other transmission to do a mate. But if it's not like the same timing, that same feel,
if it takes longer, then you're slowing down the whole line.
Yeah.
And that costs
The
money.
accountants get mad.
Now, let me ask you this. You were there. Did you survive the GM bankruptcy?
yes.
Okay.
She smiles.
I smile, right? Because like I said, there were these ancillary engineering centers, right? And, through bankruptcy, like every single time there's a meeting of like all hands meeting, or like someone comes from GM, from Michigan corporate to visit, we're all like, this is it.
Yeah. Oh, right.
This is the meeting.
Clean out your desk.
Right. So let me ask you, how I know the government was involved with like this brand's dying, like Saturn dead. Were they involved in like product planning? Meaning like, I read the book. I can't remember the guy's name, but the guy that helped restructure GM. Was he like, no, you're not doing a hybrid Escalade, or was that was GM allowed to make that decision?
As far as I know, it was GM's own stuff. I mean, for anything in the electrification world and to help and through bankruptcy, we looked for any like DOE project to work on, to be able to Department of Energy, to be able to keep development going.
Right.
And
when we chatted, you mentioned a couple of projects that you were working on that did not ultimately survive, and there were some interesting ones in there, including, some of it just was like a brand thing, like the Saturn View hybrid. Did that ever
so that got all, like there were press drives as far as it got up to being like right before it was supposed to.
I remember it. Yeah. Chromeless weird hybrid.
Yeah, and that one was a packaging challenge. That was shoehorning a lot into a little space in that engine bay and the Saturn View. So that was essentially the transmission basis was very similar to the Volts.
Okay, right.
Transmission, the first gen Volts.
That's that planetary gear with the traction motor.
Yeah. So there were, a few little differences, within the transmission, but for the most part, same part numbers of many things were going into both stuff.
What else? As you worked on first gen Volt, Spark EV. You mentioned the
Spark
CTS.
EV, by the way, was awesome. I always loved that because it was like 400 pound-feet of torque in like a 2,000 pound car. Yeah,
right.
That one, I read a special place for sure. I was like, that's one program I worked from like the days of packaging studies, like all the way out into production, and seeing it out on the road, driving in consumers' hands, and it's rare to have that.
Yeah,
people get moved around on programs.
Yeah, sure, especially at GM.
And that one, right? They came and was like, "We're gonna do this EV, and we want to do it in like 2 years."
And normally it's 4.
Yeah,
right?
and they're like, "What do we have? Do we think we can do it?" And
what's off the shelf?
Yeah.
Yeah.
off the shelf at a time when literally there's like
no shelf.
Yeah.
The government is auctioning your
yeah.
shelves off.
Right. And so that's where
that's very Lutz. I mean, I know a little bit about like the development of the Pontiac Solstice was like, great, we'll use the parking lights off the Blazer and
and so it was fun, and to be like, okay, well, we parts stuff a lot from the Volt was there, and that was like the main basis.
And it was the traction motor from the Volt that was the rear drive of the Spark. Is that right?
No, so it was a new motor development, like the transmission case design and all that, but the inverter unit, the motor controller was a bit depopulated Volt inverter because the inverter unit had, with a Volt, there's 2 motors.
It's only one
motor and generator, and there was only one in the Spark EV. So
let me ask you this: so how were you working for Auto? Because I remember I was like furious. Like, what do you mean we have someone that works for GM like that?
Well, so I was writing there before then I started at GM, and then when I started at GM, I was like, I need to phase this out.
No, but like I remember talking to Neff. John Neff was the editor in chief. He's like, "Who cares?" I'm like, "It's a conflict of interest."
Yeah,
I'm like, she can't say anything nice about GM or bad about Ford. And he's like, "Oh, it doesn't matter."
I felt the same way, right? And so
Okay.
You just inverted that, which was great.
I had talked
nice about Ford, bad about GM.
No, she can't say anything nice about GM or bad about Ford. She had no credibility. If a GM employee is saying Ford sucks, who cares? You know?
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
So I have avoided anything to do with that for a bit, and then
because we had, by the way, I think like Chris, I forget his last name, but worked at a GM factory, did like IT at a factory, and like he's writing.
Palker?
No, different one. And you never heard of him, but nice guy. But I found out I was at like Palkert's house. I'm like, what? You work for your GM?
Yeah.
Like it was so ragtag. It was such a.
But you were also doing the GM internal newspaper stuff.
So then
right?
I was able to
Yes,
after that,
I remember that. Yeah.
do stuff with GM internal communications.
But real quick, just because I worked there, how did you start it on a blog? How did you?
So I should blame Jalopnik for that one.
That's how I started. Yeah.
That there was something Jalopnik put up about like, we now have a female writer that's going to come on the staff, and I was like, what? And I wrote something to Autoblog that went to John Neff. Like,
oh, I remember this. That was Laura Burston. It was yes, and that she lasted about 1 minute, but yeah.
And
yeah.
And I forget exactly what I wrote.
Right.
But it was kind of like the spur of the moment thing of like,
right.
I'm going to power. And then he was like, I get a reply back and it's like, yeah, that sounds good. Cool. Okay, let's have. And I was like, wait, what?
And that's probably the last time you talked to him. That's how he was. It was like, because I remember I was like, I forget how it came up, but like somehow they were like, same thing. I was like, hey, I should write for you guys because I was like done with Jalopnik. And he was like, oh, okay, great. Here's what we're going to pay you. I'm like, that's too little. Oh, okay, well, maybe we'll figure something else out. And that was kind of it, And then I was like, there's always like some weird like GTR tuner in Ohio. And I was, they contact me and I'm like, John, you're in Cleveland. Go drive this. Nah. I'm like, no, it's 1,000 horsepower GTR. Like, not interested. I was like pulling my hair out like, God bless the guy. He's very good at what he does. But he was not the biggest car enthusiast. He was into like front 3/4 shots of cars.
Which are fine.
I mean, he was really into them.
So you're doing the internal communications piece, which I think is funny at General Motors because you got to attend like press junkets and launches, right? And report on them back to like the massive GM organizing body.
Seriously?
Stuff on the home landing page internally.
You'd go to GM or other OEM?
No, we'd go to GM.
Oh, see, you should have been going to other OEMs.
Yeah.
Spy. They would not allow.
But
no, you spy. That happens.
But going to the West Coast launch events because they would do stuff in San Francisco.
Right. Were you at the Chevy HHR SS launch in Arizona?
No, I did like the
that was a good one.
The Sonic in San Francisco and then stuff with SEMA coverage.
Were these internal? Did you get hang out with like idiot automotive journalists?
Yes.
Nice.
You got to do all the dinners together. Right. It was like,
did you report like this guy ordered 2 steaks?
This guy's an idiot. Any fun stories of overserved colleagues eating giant shrimp or worse?
That's right. Oh, the shrimp is terrible. And there's so little of it.
No, I'm such I'm just happy to be here.
Okay. Well, it's spill the tea anytime you like.
Yeah.
They made me skateboard. So that was the thing with the Sonic event, right? It was like it's young and edgy and
You're
that
young?
stuff. Yeah. So one of the stops on the drive was like to go to a skate shop, and I was like,
I'm snorting because it's so.
Yeah, exactly. And
every journalist has a broken wrist.
I have a photo of me like skating in the mini ramp on the Sonic event because I skated.
You know how to skate? Okay.
And it was
you were like the only person relate in the PR market.
Right.
For those of you listening, most car journalists do not resemble skaters.
Right. Or they're so grizzled they'd be like, "We're doing what?"
Yeah.
Like, come on.
Yeah.
Like they eye roll the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, they're eye rolling the whole thing from the minute they get there.
But God love the PR department for thinking that would be a fun activity.
Yeah.
I just remember though that this HR HHR SS, which was such a
it's a great
ridiculous car. No, it was a great car. It was
Cobalt
ridiculous.
SS. platform,
Cobalt
yeah.
SS.
Yeah.
No lift shift premiered in that.
That was a Heinrichs. No.
Yes.
Heinrichs helped develop it.
Yes,
I think.
because I went to the launch. It was the most insane launch because like Lutz was there, so like, and John Heinrichs. So like Bob Lutz and John Heinrichs are giving hot laps. And each one's trying to like outdo the other for like total insanity. And Lutz had no piss. Anyways, it was, and cars like I remember Dan Pund, a competitor of ours, like spun off the track magnificently. It was awesome. It was great. It was Bob Bondurant was there. It was a crazy launch. It was really cool.
That was fun. I forget. It was, I think maybe it was it Speed Vision still at the time? Or Speed Channel that did the show with, where it was GM with the Cobalt SS, and then there was a group that had Volkswagen, Jetta, and then it was XS Engineering with the R32 Nissan Skyline.
Right.
GTR that was like on this.
This is like Ultimate Streetcar Challenge, kind of.
I forget the name of what it was, but I was
Did
there.
Did the Cobalt win? Beat everything?
Yeah, I was there at Button Willow with XS Engineering.
Cobalt SS was actually a legit car.
Well, yeah, they were trying to cash in on the tuner culture.
Heinrichs driving.
Well, with Heinrichs driving, he'll sacrifice everything for the win.
Look, GM is no slouch, but they realize that we can do you got a VTEC, we got an Ecotec. You got a turbo? You don't got a turbo? We can put a turbo on this.
Well, Ecotec was amazing. I mean, there was that land speed car with the Ecotec motor.
They get serious about it. They can do amazing things for sure.
Yeah.
But ultimately, maybe the writing was on the wall with the bankruptcy. You're like, everybody seemed to be looking around. And then this was like, what, 2012, 13?
Well, so for me and my story there gets interesting, right? Because that was the timing of when I was pregnant with my first child, with my daughter, right? That it was finally the meeting happened, right? When I was with GM, where they had the all hands and come out and bring everyone together. And they're like, and now we're going to consolidate our engineering centers, like expand operations in Pontiac. So we're going to move stuff out of here and we're going to, do a transition and roll things down. And then a week later, I found I was pregnant with my first child and was like, I'm supposed to figure this out, and
did they want you to go to Michigan?
And they wanted to
non-starter.
Move to Michigan. Yeah, it wasn't.
Sorry to all those Michiganders listening who are like, "What? Michigan's the best.
Pontiac's awesome."
It's like gonna leave LA for Pontiac. Michigan.
It wasn't in my plans to move to Michigan, and I was left like, how do we figure this out? And that's why I had to make a transition and figure out the.
And you went from GM to.
I went to what was Honeywell Turbo at the time, which is now Garrett. So I went back to turbochargers in, essentially going to now start with electrification and turbochargers. The main product there was in working with Honda on application for fuel cell for the fuel cell Clarity and doing a high-speed electric compressor for. So with your fuel cell and the fuel cell stack, its stoichiometric ratio is much higher, right? That it needs a lot more oxygen for the process. So most have, something that kind of adds some forced induction or, increase of airflow in
supercharger
the intake. So this was where, Honda went a direction to be more unique and use, add another electric motor with the high voltage bus to, have a much more, tied in more with like the throttle control in the intake of air.
This was that first generation.
So it's the second
generation, right? Because the first gen I drove it like in 2008 or something. 2009, yeah.
So with a lot of the fuel cell packages, there's still a bit of a battery pack in there that is the kind of your buffer and your transients, because the fuel cell output might not be,
match
the power
up and down.
Exactly.
So you got to have a store of energy to constantly supply the motor. Yeah.
So then that's where Honda went the bit direction to be able to decrease that a bit and have a bit more control tied with the accelerator pedal input to increase the airflow on demand.
We didn't kind of talk about from your time in GM, but you mentioned that you wanted to get into electrification because you saw like all these stories coming in your SAE magazine. Like, so were you into it at this time? Were you like, this is cool, this is the future? Like, I worked on this stuff at GM. I'm sure Turbo X is like ex-GM powertrain person. Yeah, you can take her. Like,
yeah, I had exactly. I fit right in because I had the turbocharger background with electrification. Right. But yeah, I was all in. That's EVs and electrification is what I wanted to continue.
Let's get to Faraday Future.
Yeah, how long were you at a Garrett?
No, Faraday Future.
I know, but just curious. Like this.
It was about a year and a half. So that's where for me it was like, since I had a baby, I had to leave GM a bit earlier than some of my colleagues there, because that was part of it. I asked them, I was like, so when is my job done? They're like, oh, well, when it transitions to the next person. I was like, I have to do that to have a baby. I'm going to be out, so I'm going to transition my work to someone else.
Right.
I was like, how do I work this and have a maternity leave and not be off? And so it worked out well. I was able to actually get 6 months home instead of the normal, otherwise 3 with my first child.
Oh, that's great.
And then it kind of fell in my lap right at the time. I mean, I already knew people there at Honeywell Turbo, and I had talked with them a bit right when I learned that GM would be, transitioning the engineering center. And so they had just opened up a role that fit perfectly for me. And so I lucked out.
That means
there.
You're a talent, because when people make a job for you to get you, no, serious. Like,
yeah,
I do it all the time. I did it with this. No,
and
it was Faraday. Let's get to Faraday.
Yeah,
Future.
and then
Future.
So I was, still watching on the sidelines as my former colleagues at GM, moved on and did things, and so I saw, some folks, pop up and note this FF thing that they were starting into.
And they were hot. I mean, when they started, they were like, I remember I was there. They're like, we have 600 employees. We're gonna have 1,800 by tomorrow.
Because this was 2014, 20.
Yeah, so my daughter was born in October 2013, and so then it was early in 2014 when I went.
So Tesla was like white hot at this
stuff.
time, and there's a bunch of EV startups kind of popping up, and a lot of your GM colleagues were popping up at these places, right?
Yeah, so then that forced a bunch of people to reconsider what they were doing.
And you had successfully engineered an electric car, the Spark. Yeah, so that's pretty good.
So my boss, who had actually hired me in at GM, was leading the drive unit area at Faraday Future. Okay. So I ended up talking with him and was like, and he was like, what do you want to do? And so
how long were you there before you realized that like there's no future here?
Yeah, you were employee 43 or something?
Well, at Canoe later, okay, but at Faraday I was, I don't know, 100 and something, 200 something.
So how long before you were like, this isn't going well?
But that again already, like I was pregnant with my second child when I changed that job, and that's something. So that was my conflict. It was like, I think you're not typically, people don't do that, like you don't. But I, already had a relationship previously with my boss on who I was going to work for. So I was able to talk with them and say, figure out that it would be beneficial for me. And I figured.
And let's just throw the marker down. Let's be honest. Hey, women get pregnant, and if you're a company, deal with it. Like you want talent, bring them in, let them go on maternity leave, and come back, and they'll be awesome. Like,
but let's also talk about Faraday's, like it's the books that will be written that are currently being written about Faraday.
Let's hear it. How was it on the inside?
So to me on that, like I figured as much. I was a little bit like, oh, startup, like how risky, and then I realized like I'm gonna go. I was going there to go work again with a lot of people I'd worked with previously at GM that essentially made up the powertrain department there. And I was like, you know what? If something we just go do something else, like.
But like when we talked to them, I mean, we were talking to them in like 2016, early in 16, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna have a car in production by 17. I'm like, what? Where's your factory? We don't need a factory. We'll just build it in Norway or something. I'm like, really? Yeah. And they were like, they actually got in trouble because I quoted the guy. He's like, we're not fucking around. And I was like, I wrote it down, and then he got fired the next day. Marcus, I'm very sorry I wrote it down, but he did say it. I remember I was sitting in my mom's kitchen on the phone with them. I'm like, all right, they're gonna have a car, and I think he said Q4 of 2017, which I'll remind everyone it's now Q3 of 2022, and there's no Faraday future.
Yeah, it was right. It was going in and going fast, and it was throw people at everything, right? Like people coming in, starting every week would be a flood. It was kind of fun, like going in to start there, already having such a history and working relationship with a lot of people that were
Torrance,
there.
Right?
Yeah, I started.
It's the old Nissan headquarters.
Yeah, it was in an old Nissan building.
Gardena, yeah.
Even found, their old, base plates, in the floor and stuff. So we found some plates and then had them sent out and refinished, cleaned up, and it was already kind of established a bit in engineering needs on some stuff. And then actually we got some motor dynes that were auctioned off from when our GM facility closed.
Oh, right.
And so we got a good bit of equipment from there too.
But there's a point, I think, that everyone I know that worked at Faraday, at least, where they were like, oh my God, I got this is not happening. Like, what was that point for you? I'm assuming that happened for you. It wasn't.
Yeah, right. There was a significant turning moment on stuff where the information did not match up of what I knew from one place to another, and I said, I don't feel comfortable working here anymore.
Because I remember, early on, I went there, and I'm like, so where's all this money coming from? They're like, oh, we got this guy. He's like the Elon Musk of China, and he gave us $1 billion. And I'm like, well, that's not very much to build a car. Like, what do you do when you no longer have $1 billion? He'll give us another check for $1 billion. I'm like, that's a terrible, terrible plan.
Well, so what were you doing there? Like, what was occupying
Powertrain.
Yeah, powertrain test and validation. I designed and built up and managed a drive unit test stand, and then worked with dynamometers and motor testing. And
do you see any of your work in whatever they have kind of scooting around in press pictures or little videos, as far as you know?
Well, there's of stuff from when I was there, like the test stand that I, managed and built up, would show in videos. It was a big part. That's one thing I know Johnny would be excited about, to talk about Pikes Peak, right?
Sure.
That and helped in those efforts. And it's still,
Wait, did Faraday do Pikes Peak?
Yes.
They did.
That's what.
Oh,
so
I didn't know that.
Oh, we can go into the Sendy Club.
Yeah.
Who has won Pikes Peak the past 3 years formed.
Roman Dumas.
Sendy Club is Robin Shute.
Robin Shute. Sorry, Roman Dumas.
Robin was
Robin. Sorry, British guy. Yeah.
Robin was the driver of the FF91, and that Pikes Peak. That was his.
I didn't know it went up.
First time running. So the Sendy Club was all.
Yeah, so there's
FF
a lot of
alumni.
Rivian. There's a lot of Rivian people in the Sendy Club.
What year was
now
that?
They are.
Now they were Faraday.
Yeah, so that's where it formed, and so
Right.
now it's like they're Canoe and Rivian and different stuff. People have moved on, but they stayed together and doing the Sendy Club, and so I love watching my EV friends kick butt with internal combustion.
Yeah, no, because Robin's car is definitely gasoline powered, and would have probably beaten the Volkswagen all-time record this year, but fog. Yeah.
Right.
But okay, I didn't. So the thing that went up Pikes Peak for Faraday, I had to look it up. But that was it. That was based on the production car.
FF91.
It was one of our test cars.
It was one of the test cars. And how did it do?
Yeah, it did. It did well. It could have been even faster. There was a software bug that caused it to have Robin to have to stop near the top for like 30 seconds and do
that's
a
not
reset.
Good. Yeah,
So
that's really bad.
Well, it was a stuck. It thought it was a stuck accelerator pedal bug. So it was part of So because like when it got to the point where it was seeing on-off throttle, and it was like, oh, this must be a stuck accelerator. It was a bit conservative in the software in that area.
He was reading his racing as an error code.
So then it's like,
I'll be honest. I raced Pikes Peak this year, and I didn't really care about Pikes Peak until I went the year before and like hung out in the pits. Because I went a long time ago. I think I was on Autoblog, and I was like sitting on the side of the mountain. I'm like, this is boring. Like the cars go by, boom, boom. But then I was in the pits. I'm like, this is thrilling. And then I wound up racing it, which is it's awesome.
Now you have the bug. I know. I want to get out there sometime.
It's so cool.
So you weren't able to support this racing effort. You just kind of worked on it.
Yeah. So I helped on the drive unit test stand. So we did test profiles of what would be the expected speeds and torque for the course. Through folks there at FF, we had information and history from race cars in Pikes Peak, so we had good inputs to use to see what temperatures would look like.
Okay. So then
it's a wild thing. I mean, it's just like
it's great for great for EVs, right? It's like the perfect
in a way. Although
setting.
They get real hot when there's because remember that there's no oxygen in there, so they're getting hot. Now they don't have to last long, but the heat's a factor. But I don't know if you heard what happened to Randy Popes this year, but he's going and he had to turn the defroster up, and he's staring at a screen that he's never even thought about where the defroster is on the screen. And
while trying to race.
So David Donner was in a 911 Turbo S car, so when he needed more defroster, he just clicked the thing because it's a button, and Randy had to like loosen his belts, lean forward, and start rubbing the windshield.
Well, so
so it's like there's good things about EVs, but not.
I'm friends with a bunch of folks on the Evasive Motorsports team that ran the Model 3 that Dio Yoshihara drive, and he did really well.
I parked behind him,
and so I'm like messaging. Well, I mean, one of my friends will always message me like the day before, asking me questions and I'm like, this is a little late to be asking me like. These parameters on the.
That's what I love about Pikes, and also this is when I really liked like land speed records. It's like no one really knows, like what I mean. Like for other types of things, like you kind of know, but like no one really knows the answer.
Let's just be awesome. Let's talk about how awesome that is. You were getting text messages from a team racing Pikes Peak, like on the eve of, and shout out to my man Dio Yoshihara, who I go surfing with. And
do you?
Yeah, and they're literally texting you for like. You guys have been out here before. Like, what should we do? And you're like, are you guys serious? Like, it's 11 o'clock. I got kids.
Well, just talking about thermal expectations on stuff of.
Well, much more importantly, Di and I were drinking whiskey together on the summit. So yeah. I literally when I parked, it was his Model 3 was in front of me.
Nice.
He got up there a few minutes before me.
Yeah, the surf. Your guys are the Dawn Patrol.
Yes,
yeah, I see the.
Yeah, you should come out. You're a big swimmer. Come on, you surf.
I don't surf. I'm from the East Coast. Like I did.
It's not that
surfing.
Hard. Really, you can swim 2.5 miles in water.
I don't surf.
Okay. So the magic at Faraday Future wore off after 2.5 years. 2015 and a half. I have here 2015 to about 2017 and a half or so, midway through, and then you end up at Canoe as employee number 42.
Yeah.
Nice.
That
means equity, right?
Well, did you go to Rivian?
Let's
see a little note here. Were you at Rivian at all, or is that?
No. That was a note that a bunch of people that she worked with have ended up like literally sprinkled across all of these EV startups.
Yeah,
right? That's kind of.
Yeah. So, I with a lot of other folks from FF as well, right? Went to Canoe at the start of that to build it up and to take on that challenge of. I mean, it's a amazing experience, working to build a whole automotive company.
The
scratch,
trucklet, whatever it's called, the van looks cool. It just looks cool. It's really cool.
So
it's cute.
And with our first beta cars, I worked and did hot weather testing, cold weather testing, a lot of the
We saw you.
testing.
We saw you at a proving ground.
Yes.
Yeah.
That one we go to a lot.
Yeah, and we were so excited, but we couldn't take pictures of it.
We're like, look at that thing.
We were
Oh my God.
literally, it was one of our of the year programs, and everyone's just like, "Oh my God, I got to go drive
The
it."
bi-directional van is going. And look at
and it would pass us, and it was like it's the coolest looking thing. It just has like such a unique presence.
The internet loved it when you guys did. I think you were there when you guys dropped the a rendering of the truck with a tent on the
overlandy.
Yes,
pickup
like
thing.
that was like fan service. Like you were like, oh boy, because we did it. We did a post on. We're like, this thing's awesome.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, the truck is in the overlandy version, the adventure trim one. That was me in the
Oh, was it?
in the doing the photo shoot with the car.
Oh, no kidding. Oh, cool.
She's everywhere.
Yeah,
Merritt's really everywhere.
I know
This is
it's crazy. It's crazy. But like, so Canoe 4.5 years, and like I want to do like big picture. Like, when am I gonna drive it? Like, what's going on with Canoe? What can you say about Canoe?
What can you say
About the product?
Yeah.
But I was gonna say
Yeah.
and doing with our first beta cars when we first got them and start doing vehicle testing. Then I went into hot weather testing, and it was one of the first times of getting to the point and driving it and doing on-road driving. And so it was the first one going out and driving it in Death Valley, and then around grades around in Nevada and Arizona and Davis Dam. And so like I get out there in the car and just out in nature. It was the big one to me was in driving it up Mount Charleston in outside Las Vegas. It's a longer stretch, but a good climb where you're going from like total desert, and you end up you make a turn, and there's like a tree line, and you're going up, and there's like pine trees and things. And
Right.
It's a cool drive, but sitting in the canoe, I was like, this view is incredible. Just felt like it was like in a pod.
Because all
by
the
the way,
big glass
floating and-
windows.
yeah.
For those of you listening at home, like pause this podcast and Google Canoe, because it's like a helicopter. That's like the front of a helicopter.
It's like a Bell. It's like a little Bell helicopter, and it's a CANOO. Look at Google that. Not like canoe,
not spelled the right way. It's spelled the wrong way. Yeah.
But but Canoe's model is eventually autonomous, whatever, full self-drive. Like they drive themselves, right? But at this point, you are just validating that the powertrain works. So you are driving it.
Yeah, so it had always been from the beginning the direction, and its concept was package protect for the thought of collaboration in some autonomous way.
So
but
when the technology's there,
when it's there,
you're
but
fast following.
it's not gonna be there for a while.
long time. Yeah.
So it's
EV
gonna
first,
be driven.
right.
Yeah,
EV first, but human driver, eventually full autonomous.
Yeah.
Okay.
in that inevitable future.
So protected for level 5, but like ready to go level 2.
Yeah.
Okay. That's so cool.
So then,
But real quick, so what's it like to like drive a car like you've built, and not like a race car, but like if you're there 4.5 years, that means you were there when they were like blueprints or sketches.
To go from
Like that's got to be one of the coolest things in the whole
world.
It
That's what I mean. It was an incredible experience to have to go from from everything, from planning out like what are the specs we need to do here, what are the requirements we're trying to do, how do we validate that, and then where's the building gonna be that we're gonna do stuff in, what's gonna be in this building.
And are you talking, and I assume, because I know kind of when you get together for hot and cold weather, are you talking to like people at Rivian, people at Lucid, people at other EV startups about like doing 2 motors or 4 motors, like that kind of thing? Or
so it starts a lot in seeing what of course with any startup you have to be budget conscious, right? And so you want to start with, okay, what's potentially off the shelf,
right,
in the automotive world. Now we're even more years later, there's a bit more offerings in that way, but it's kind of like go to the supply base and be like, okay, what do you have in
Although
development?
it seems like most OEMs, at least, are figuring out like we got to do our own motors. Like off the shelf motors, kind of long term, are pretty bad. Like we need to in-house the motors.
Yeah, that was when I was at GM. It was always a contentious thing between folks in electrification and then, whatever the plans were on the business side, where, in terms of all the power electronics and the motors and that stuff.
Johnson Control makes a motor. Use that. Like,
yeah,
no, it's not good enough.
To us, that was like, this is the evolution from, making your engines and transmissions and all that this should be what we call like core business stuff. And so, there's just hemming and hawing between those decisions.
Well, it was interesting. I was at Lucid. I was in the kind of the Willy Wonka part of their factory. Like, it's crazy what they're up to. But like, they had, I remember they had a Bolt motor, and they were showing it off as an example of this is good technology. And they had a Tesla motor. Like, this is terrible. And Peter, designed the Tesla motor, and he was like, this is 10 years ago thinking. He's like, we love what GM did, but they overcomplicated it by a factor of 2. We've reduced it. They have 200 welds. We have 20. Same thing. And I was like, I didn't know the Bolt was that advanced. And they were just going crazy on the powertrain. Like they're talking about,
So, but you were saying something interesting about how Johnny asked you, like, you gotta see the thing in blueprints, and then ultimately you gotta drive it. But also,
up a mountain.
your that part I think was new for you, right? Because prior to in your previous experience, you've been working really hands-on, building test stands. Now you're leading a team. You're setting up the R&D facilities, the validation facilities. You're actually like, how many chargers we need? Or what do we put in this? Like you're saying, what do we put in this building? Was that also like the first time that you got to go out and do the real world testing of the vehicles, or were you doing that at GM or other places before?
Well, so that was, the first time I got to do much more extensive vehicle testing. I had a Spark EV as like a captured test fleet driver when I was at
But you're not
GM.
trying to break it.
Right, yeah.
That was squeaks and rattles kind of, right?
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's like part of the first, few units, 50 at least.
So for the car nerds at home, sorry to interrupt. The captured
aspiring car nerds.
Aspiring car nerds. So captured test fleet is a thing that General Motors does. So do others, but I think GM is sort of the most famous for it, and it's pretty smart. The first few production units that come off the line, they go to certain departments, usually PR is involved, some engineering, and they basically drive them around for weeks, months, and report on any issues they find to send back to the people that built them to say, hey, we got this. Everybody has reported a squeak in the A pillar.
Right.
Can you look
the C pillar is vibrating at 600 hertz at 80 miles an hour.
Right.
Or whatever.
Is that fair? Is that a good
explanation? And helps dial in the production processes.
Right. Captured test. It's kind of a cool term, but for a lot of executives, it's like their only time. This is the only time with the product, for good and bad. Like they get to drive it, they drive it early. They don't see like 3 years down the road when they pulled all the cost out of the car, right? So
that's right.
But sorry. So you were saying like how fun was it to do? Also, how'd you do it as a mom? You had like 2 kids.
I was gonna say, how'd you do it with 2 kids?
Like you're driving to Las Vegas and like, woo, that's fun. But it's also like, holy crap.
Good husband.
She's smiling.
Supportive something.
That's
well, since my daughter's born, I had started with a nanny. I couldn't do it without that. Yeah. I mean, COVID was difficult.
Oh,
right.
Right. Oh my God.
And having them in private school, so they actually got to go back to school earlier than they would have.
Okay.
Otherwise, helped. But yeah, too, and work through all of this. I was still running around all over, like through COVID, doing things because it's like, you just go in the middle of nowhere when you're testing cars and stuff anyway. So it's like, you won't be around anyone, so it's okay. Just a lot of long days and planned time. At least to get to the proving grounds locations, I could do it in one day if I desired, or go back and forth if I.
Yeah. It's one of those, you gotta make that choice. Like I'm up early, home late, I've done that. We've all done that.
Right, but then you kind of miss the kid both ways, right? You get
yeah.
in after they go to sleep, and then you got to be up before they're awake. It's it's super tough. But the overall good experience then at Canoe.
Yeah.
And so why'd you leave? May I ask?
There's comes a time too for development. I kind of realized I had done all the things
right.
already.
There's nothing left to do.
Yeah,
right,
gotten to
right.
a point. And I think my strengths and desires really lie in going through that startup process and defining
Gotcha.
from scratch again in the beginning. So
right.
that's what it was like at GM and starting an electrification area, right? We first of putting anything electrified into production. So we looked at the processes and, the test plans, the standards that were all internal combustion based, and then said, okay, how does this apply now to our more electrified parts?
Right.
There's stuff all written for ECUs, engine, engine controls. And other, small electronics. So they're all low voltage, 12 volt base, and a large one would be like not even a pound, right? Not very heavy or large in size. And so
now
we're trying to do these large, power electronics that have, glycol cooling in them, and especially with like a motor controller and inverter, it's completely transient in operation. It's not just you don't just turn it on and then that's has a steady load on it while you're going around driving.
All kinds of stuff.
Yeah, it's temperatures are fluctuating around all the time, and so I had to start to think what now are the profiles that these parts have to do.
So what you're saying is you like taking on like there's nothing in place. Let's figure out all these best practices, and and once it's up and running, it's like, okay, I've done that. What's the next challenge?
Yeah.
Okay. It's like where we started in space. She likes to start with the Big Bang, like the foundational stuff. Really, like why come in later when you have a chance to influence things like really early on?
Are you going to come back to automotive? Do you think after your
stint at Coco?
Coco is up and running, and you've defeated 12-year-olds trying to bash your robots off the road with pool cues.
So I see Johnny, how much he complains about public
everything?
Charging, about charging infrastructure.
Specifically Electrify America. Let's be real. Because
names.
Well, no, the reason is they're the only ones with like 150 kilowatt hour chargers. I'm not going to mess around with a 50 kilowatt hour charger.
They have 350.
And they have 350. But like they just don't work,
And so that's where I think if there's a spot that's interesting, maybe that needs some more reliability and development, is
California's pumping
charging.
multiple tens of billions into the grid. Like they were saying, 68% increase in grid capacity within the next like 20 or 30 years. So like there's a lot, and it's all for EVs. It's all for EVs mostly.
So you have charging on your brain looking at it. I think that's great.
Smart.
For our audience, because we're close, we got to wrap up here pretty soon. But from where you sit, and you had this glorious history. I mean, you literally have worked at a major legacy car company. You've worked at a couple of startups. You've done all this stuff on power. Literally, getting your hands. I don't even call it greasy. Getting them
fried.
Yeah, it's weird
Shocked.
for me going to work now, where I'm like, oh, I don't have the expectation of being covered in like ATF or coolant.
Right.
Like anytime that I show up at work.
Where is automotive going? If you look across the landscape, who do you think
winners and losers?
Yeah, who do you think is going to make it? Who's not going to make it? As far as you can tell. I mean, I know like you don't get to drive. Now you're supposed to be probably not driving everything, but if you had to guess, you're like, oh, I think this solution, this battery electric solution, is going to prevail. Do you have any insight into like who's got the best combination?
Well, I've always liked the direction Tesla's going in their development. And Lucid's had some good time too to work on things, but and it was part of our direction at GM from the get-go too, is a lot more of, you got to have a lot of integration on your components for like more efficiency and the packaging, and big OEMs typically it's so farmed out and all the components, and then they're just like bolted and pieced together, but it doesn't work as well to get like, as you said, a motor from here, a motor from there, and then they got to have different control modules that are all separate pieces. So it's everyone's got to be sitting
and also
together.
Just hardware wise, I know it's hard to like integrate it, and like it doesn't really fit what we drew up initially, but now we got to compromise our plans because that's what we got.
But fundamentally, you're talking about vertical integration, right?
Yeah, and then and two, right? Your gearbox is built in right with the motor packaging in one case and stuff. It's not going to be, okay, we have our motor housing here and then we're bolting in this gearbox that someone else is delivering to us and all that. Like that, you just can't package that in the way the direction is going to expand your passenger volume, give back your occupants their space. And
like Lucid, for instance, like I just looked at their Sapphire, which is their 3-motor car, and they added a second motor to the rear axle, and the amount of space they lost for like, passenger luggage, 0. They literally lost 0 space because it's so compact, it's wild.
If you,
it's like
with that base platform too, right? If you package, protect, and note, okay, you leave in the space, like we can put something front and rear, have the option, of all-wheel drive, front wheel, or real wheel, then it's there already. You just
protect for it.
So. As I took the similar tour, shorter tour. Take some cells out, chop the front, the nose of the rear, make a smaller car that doesn't need to have 1,000 horsepower and can go.
Whoa! Why don't you need 1,000 horsepower?
No, because you want to sell the thing at $25,000 or $30,000.
What's this no 1,000 horsepower?
Well. The key to billions is it's sell a lot of hamburgers.
Hey, look at Ferrari,
where's their EV?
Look at the Porsche IPO that's coming up. There's lots of ways to make a lot of money.
Right. So. But sorry, so companies that can vertically integrate who pay attention to making sure that everything is protected, packaged correctly, but name names. Who do you like? And you're looking at China at all? Did you guys do any studies of like, oh boy, look at
hang
this?
on, let her answer the first one.
Oh, okay.
Well, right.
Who's doomed? Start with that.
I'd really like to see Lucid to keep succeeding and stuff. I think they've done a really good job. I've talked to some people there before, and always impressive people.
Does that excite you, like as an engineer? Because we talked to Peter, and he's just like efficiency. We're 19% more efficient than it. Yes. Because he's like, all you people write about is range and horsepower. You don't talk about efficiency. We're 19% more efficient. And I was like, is that a lot? He's like, yes, that's it. I was like, oh, okay.
I mean, it comes down to it matters so much down to like your 12-volt electronics use on how, what you're selecting there, how they are being used, right? Like in all your controls of what you're choosing to do. There's so much to gain in those thoughts.
But so I guess maybe the answer is Lucid, but like as someone who's been doing this professionally for 13, 14 years, like are they the sexiest because of the efficiency and just like everything's in-house, everything's miniaturized, everything's stronger than what everyone else is doing?
Right, I do think it's sexy. But it's also
same, by the way, same. Yeah,
it's still high end, right? It's not quite that. So like that's where at Canoe the goal was like no one is aiming towards that lower price point to what would be a wider
Wider
potential
market,
adoption.
EVs for the masses, Johnny.
Yeah.
Get off of your exclusive luxury
I'm
only.
just, dude, 1,000 horsepower.
Yeah.
like that's
Nobody needs it.
How dare you?
Nobody
I need
needs.
it. I need
People
it.
want
Need
it. I get it, but
How
the
dare you.
market
How
for
dare
a
you.
$30,000 300-mile EV,
Yeah, Chevy Bolt's already out there. Well, it's not quite 300, but it's close. Yeah, it's close.
and nobody are buying. Nope, they're not buying.
So
It's kind of dorky looking.
I'm partial to GM powertrain.
Right,
For sure.
your bias is clear. So is mine.
Yeah, but it's like the design direction or the design language, right? It's still so much like can't get away from the internal combustion or still making things like I thought it had already proved back with Prius design that, you know, people are interested in not looking the same as your counterpart that is an internal
like
combustion.
for instance, you know, the Chevy Silverado EV, great name. You know, it looks pretty spacey. It's like a big Mars rovery looking thing, and
it's yeah, right. They're getting more flair.
okay,
Right?
fair, yeah. Because Ford,
To
I think, made a
differentiate,
mistake
but-
with the Lightning. Maybe not, but like just kind of looks like an F-150.
I think it's a good. That Ford's genius with all of their top selling products is to use existing brands and nameplates and
well,
electrify them. F-150 number one selling pickup. F-Series number one
I
selling
know,
pickup
yeah,
truck in
well,
the US.
unless you add GMC to Chevy, then it's actually outsold Ford for 50
Not
years.
not F-Series.
Yeah. No.
Because Ford's fudging includes 150, 250, 350, 450.
No. I'm telling you, I've talked to everyone at GM about this. If you were to add, Chevy
Silverado,
sales to GMC,
Sierra.
outsells Ford. They won't do it because they want to maintain this like fantasy that GMC is a separate company. But yeah, they sell a lot of GMCs.
Probably including fleet.
They have
sales.
better front end airflow.
Ooh, wait, who does?
The GMC trucks. The
Yeah.
Sierra versus
See?
Silverado.
So different truck.
Oh, she would say GMC to Chevy.
So you get better
That's what I'm
airflow
saying.
through the
No,
radiator.
that's what I'm saying. But GM, they live with it. Like they could be
Nerd alert.
They could be like GM is actually the number one pickup maker in the U.S. We have been forever, but because we need to pretend that the GMC and the Chevy are different.
For another episode. It's for when we have Farley.
fine.
When we have Farley on.
Oh,
Yeah.
that'll be.
Which is
Yeah.
never happening.
Yeah.
But
Oh, don't say that.
okay,
Yeah.
we got the high sign
Yeah.
several minutes ago.
Yeah.
I don't think this is up close to the longest, and it's been awesome. And like I said, I told you at the top, we're gonna have you back. We're gonna get you actually because now you've stepped away from the car industry for a while. I think we're gonna get you. Maybe we have some cars at MotorTrend and you're close by. So like we had the Cadillac Lyric. I would love to hear your take on the Lyric because I'm sure you didn't work on any part of that. Maybe you did. I don't know.
I'd have to go dig into the pictures of which sometimes gets hard to find. I'm interested in drive units and like seeing motors and those parts, and I'm like, show me the good stuff.
I'm pretty sure it's a new.
care about the interior.
From what I know, it's the motors are new. It's the new Ultium motors, which are
Batteries and
Bolt
motors.
Plus motors. They're that it's that.
Yeah, it's
technology.
not Bolt. It's not Bolt. They're very clear about that.
Yeah, but it's similar with the
Suppliers
copper.
change and that
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
right.
But love to get your take on that. And we had a bunch.
I got a
of,
Rivian. You can drive my
We
Rivian.
got a bunch of EVs at the
I
office.
haven't driven a Rivian.
You got to drive a Rivian.
Yeah.
Our truck
or
of the year.
or the Lucid Air.
Yeah.
Oh, hey, you know what? Lucid's doing a huge software update soon. That's what everyone complains about the things is like the software sucks, and they're doing a massive one. And I said like, get me a car as soon as you do, and that's like 2 or 3 weeks. So if
I've
you're-
seen it thanks to you guys. That's the only time I saw the Lucid Airs. I saw
Okay.
yeah,
when you guys
if
had it
want,
out testing.
we'll go out
I
for
was
a drive.
poking at it.
You should drive it because it's going to be 1,050 horsepower, and it's like
Yeah.
it's like
Oh, right. She
It's
saw it when we were
dope.
yes, right,
Yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
So look, we're gonna have you back. We're gonna talk more about the future of automotive now that we got your glorious history out of the way. But this was awesome.
yeah.
Thank
Fun.
you. Super fun. Great to reconnect you two as old, former colleagues.
Yeah.
I mean, I only knew you on like what AOL Instant Messenger or whatever that we were using back then.
But thank you, Merritt Morris, for coming by. It was great.
Thank you.